Upon loading up Kingdom Come Deliverance, I was immediately filled with nostalgia of the last realistic medieval game I had hacked and slashed through many years ago, Mountain Blade. And while it's true that Kingdom Come shares many visual similarities with that game, as well as an open world and heightened sense of realism, after playing the game for the 5 or 6 hours it took to create this first impression, I feel that Warhorse Studios has forged an experience that has more in common with the Witchers and Skyrims of the gaming world today. What we have here is a more story-driven, open-world RPG set in the sometimes beautiful, but more often than not brutal, world of the medieval era. And even after those 5 or 6 hours I spent playing, I was only able to reach what the game considered an appropriate spot to have its opening credits, which tells me one thing: this game is vast. With that said, there are enough story elements within this short amount of time that I would consider light spoilers, so you have been warned. If you don't wish to have any of the story ruined for you, turn back now, because the story is where this game truly shines.
You might win a fight with violence, but you'll never win an argument. Remember, Henry, if you want to convince someone that they're wrong, try using your mouth, not your fists.
There comes a point in everyone's life where we're forced to make choices. These choices, big or small, will change us from the person we are to the person we're going to become. And that's what Kingdom Come Deliverance's story is built around: choice. Masking the long loading time at the start of the game, you're given some backstory, overlaying some beautiful and period-appropriate artwork. The game takes place in Bohemia. The Emperor has just died, and now his 2 sons rival for control of the land. We play as Henry, the son of a blacksmith, and a man in the formative years of his life. It's clear from the outset that Henry isn't entirely fulfilled with his current situation. He neglects his chores, spends most of his time drinking wildly with friends, and is learning how to use a sword behind his parents' back. In his own words, he'd like to know more than the tavern on the green and the forge. Even having a girl of his own, who he loves and plans on wedding, Henry will still occasionally find himself checking out the other townswomen from time to time.
Fine lass, eh? Now stop staring at her and come and see this.
He feels human, and so does everyone else in this game. They're 3-dimensional characters with passions and ideals of their own, and it goes an incredibly long way in grounding the world. But of course, this being an RPG, the choice of how Henry is ultimately perceived is entirely yours. Do you help your friends vandalize a house of a local you don't see eye to eye with? Do you walk away or fight the person who owes your father money? All these choices affect the way people see you in the world, and therefore change the story somewhat. The game does ultimately steer you down a path at certain points, but when your village is attacked and burned, when your family and friends are murdered, the game cuts you off from all those boyish things Henry was and lets you start building the man he's going to become. All this choice is wrapped around a larger story of avenging your town and recovering your father's sword. And even though this revenge story isn't the most unique one in gaming history, finding the man who killed your family and running a sword through him, the game gives the story enough time to breathe and develop, and the player enough time to get immersed in the world so that moments like this or returning to your town after like this
He didn't run like me. He died with a sword in his hand.
these moments carry a surprising amount of weight so early in the game. Yes, the animations can be janky at times, and there can be too many dialogue paths that lead to nothing, but the writing is so incredibly well done and well acted that it's easy to overlook these shortcomings. It's just a shame that my immersion was broken almost every time I was given control.
Quickly, everyone! Get your asses here!
Hey! And loose!
Many similarities could be made between Kingdom Come and other popular AAA action RPGs of years past. The Elder Scrolls games seem to be drawing the biggest comparison I've heard so far, but where those games excel in the fantastical, Kingdom Come Deliverance hooks you in with the realism of its world. Throughout your adventure, you'll need to eat, sleep, bathe, and pretty much anything else you need to do in real everyday life. The world is massive, and while you're confined to a bit of it in the opening few hours, I have no doubt that this game's world size is on par or even slightly bigger than those other games it's being compared to. Questing in Kingdom Come Deliverance is also a breath of fresh air, as most have little to no tracking and multiple ways to complete them. At one point in the game, you'll need to escape a town that has orders to keep you locked in. You can try to persuade the captain, or bribe a guard to open the gate for you, maybe steal a horse and make a break for it. Or you can just do what I did and jump off the small bridge connecting the two parts of the town and outside the security of the walls. I did have to run through a bathhouse to escape this way, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. Having the quest system not handhold you the entire way is a game mechanic I didn't realize I missed so much until right now. I could feel my brain working as I struggled to figure out how to complete some of the opening missions without being an absolute bully. Persuading others during trades or quests require much more real-world factors instead of just a number on your character's stat sheet. Factors like how high your reputation is in that current area, or whether or not your clothes are muddy or bloodstained. There seems to be many systems working behind the scenes that help determine the outcome of situations, many more besides the simple number next to that particular skill. You can persuade, haggle, threaten, and straight up fight your way through most situations. Which leads us to the combat. Not every game is perfect, and I feel that the combat in this game is one spot that could use a bit of tweaking. It could be the fact that it's early in the game, or that we're nothing more than a blacksmith's son with no real combat experience, and the game is trying to keep that realism. But to me, combat in Kingdom Come Deliverance feels outright clunky. The main combat mechanic will have you battling with your fist or a variety of weapons. You'll lock onto a target and be presented a reticule, which will allow you to choose which direction you wish to attack from. Timing and strategy seem to be at the forefront of the combat. Waiting for an enemy to strike and then placing a well-timed block seems to work better than all-out recklessness. Though, for combat so focused on sharp timing, it's a bit annoying when it feels so unresponsive. Many times I press the attack or defend buttons to have nothing happen. Either way, it's an interesting system, and one that seems to work better when you're one-on-one with an opponent. But only time will tell if it's one that can actually be mastered by the player. It's safe to say that Kingdom Come Deliverance has had a bit of a rocky start. Massive Day 1 patches have been released to fix frame rates, quest bugs, and other general issues. In my 5 to 6 hours of playtime, however, I encountered only one glitch, and it was more entertaining than game-breaking. Playing this on the PS4 Pro, I did expect a little more than what I got when it comes to graphics. What Kingdom Come excels at in its presentation is creating an atmosphere. The towns and castles feel authentic and well thought out. Sunlight pours through the tree branches, causing beautiful sun rays. The main character models are highly detailed and animated nicely, with even quiet conversation scenes being elevated by the subtle facial animations. It's something I noticed, and a real treat. The UI, although a bit cluttered and not as clean when compared to most modern games, is definitely serviceable and has an appropriate medieval feeling. The same goes for the world map. It hits that medieval art style perfectly and is simply beautiful to look at. The sound presentation is great as well. Towns feel alive with chatter, the sounds of swords clanging off each other is perfect, and the soundtrack feels authentic and cinematic at the same time. And while not the first time I've seen it done in a game, other small features like your character blinking or getting blurred vision when he's getting too tired is a nice touch that I appreciated. All these features make a pretty nice package on the PS4 Pro, but unfortunately, it does fall short in other areas. The frame rate does have a bit of noticeable stutter in certain scenes, even running at 1080p, which I believe it is on the Pro, though I never did see it tank completely, and it never felt like it was affecting my enjoyment of the game at all. On the other hand, the textures and texture pop-in are simply horrible in this game. You'll encounter many objects or buildings that just refuse to load textures at an appropriate speed. You can even be standing right next to an object and still have them take many seconds to load in textures. It's a bit immersion breaking, and my biggest gripe with the game's graphics so far. You can even see this on the very first menu of the game. Textures in the background, and on the castle specifically, are muddy and make for a pretty low first impression. Combine that with the somewhat long load times, and you definitely have room for improvement. Hopefully Warhorse Studios continues to support the game and address these issues in upcoming patches.
It's magnificent.
Indeed.
Although it feels familiar at times, Kingdom Come Deliverance is able to rise above these comparisons and become something entirely its own. With its excellent atmosphere, story, and voice acting, this RPG feels like it has a ton of potential. The realism of this world completely immersed me, and I cannot wait to sink many more hours into it myself. If you enjoy RPGs or medieval history, you should be able to find something to love in this game. Though, if you have a powerful enough rig, picking it up on PC might be the better option until it's fully patched on consoles.